I feel like the weird thing about all of this is that we are not doing true crime. I mean, it's so perfect, actually. Our podcast is about TV crime.
Right.
And they're doing a podcast
About true crime.
About true crime, which we don't do.
Right.
We do fake crime.
Fake crime. Very clear line in the sand. We do fake crime. So in case you haven't
TV
guessed
crime.
it, we are doing another Only Murders in the Building sidecast. Hello and welcome to our Only Murders Season 1 Episode 8 fan fiction episode, where we meet the original fans of, the OG fans of the, I don't know, what do they call themselves? They're like Maybellines, the Arconiacs. That's what the Arconiacs.
But there's the Maybellines, the Put Nuts, and the Hayden Maidens, yes. The Hayden Maidens, the Put Nuts, and the Maybellines, and the Arconiacs. Yes. And then, yes. But, okay, we gotta, the elephant in the room is the fact that at the end of the last episode, Oliver and Mabel were tied up in the back of a van. We're basically kidnapped.
And for that matter, Charles had gotten laid. So there's some big things happening at the end of the last episode.
And going into this episode, I have to remember that because Oliver is a jerk. He is so mean to Charles and Jan.
Yes.
And consistently, like over and over and over again. And yeah, like Mabel is annoyed that Jan has been added to the group.
But Oliver is very, very
tantrumy,
bitchy.
Such.
And Mabel
bitchy.
rolls her eyes a lot, but she's, yeah. So we've got, let's start from the fact that like deathly peril, and you thought you had won.
Yeah, but I knew I hadn't because there are all these more episodes to go.
Well, it turns out they only have one more episode of the podcast to go, because what happens is that, oh dear me, I forgot
the
Teddy.
Demas is
The
Teddy.
Demas is
Teddy and Theo.
Theo, thank you. Theo drives Mabel and Oliver to a dump where they're met up with Teddy. And Teddy is just like, he's dramatic, but he's fine. And basically what it is nothing's going to happen to you, but you're going to end the podcast tomorrow. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., you're going to come up with a podcast that says it was just a suicide and everything's fine. And this is interesting. There's this moment in here where he's like, but you killed Tim Kono. And Teddy's very clearly and immediately says, I don't know fuck about Tim Kono. So you're like, oh, okay, he really doesn't. Like, that's one of those like, yes, he's been caught as like a grave robber and a thief, but he didn't actually kill Tim Kono. So great. But now they have a deadline, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. They have to announce to the world that Tim Kono was suicide to stop the heat from coming in. Or does Teddy say he's going to murder them? He kind of does. Like he definitely
threatens them. Oliver says that he threatened bullets to their head, but I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, it wasn't that clear, but he is threatened.
And they don't know about Theo yet, right? I mean, we as the audience know about it because we've seen a flashback in Theo's mind, but they don't know that Theo has pushed Zoe off. Only Tim Kono knows that, and it is on his phone. Charles and Jan discover it.
Right. So as the audience, we learned it in the past episode, but Oliver and Mabel haven't. So they come home and they go knocking at Charles's door to share what they know, and Jan answers the door, which is where this is all like, this is not good.
Yeah.
And then they spend the whole episode trying to come up with to solve it all, and to
Detective Williams comes back into play.
Yeah, Detective Williams comes back. They bring the fans from the street up to the apartment to act out like what actually happened, and they're like got all this information because they're obsessive with it, and they're the ones who bring up the first idea that there are multiple murderers.
Yes,
because like the timeline doesn't line up, so now there are multiple
because of
murders
the fire alarm being pulled and the death, and they also
bring up the trash bag that he brings up from the floor 6, and like they bring up a lot of like unanswered things, and I guess all of this is just and what they end up doing is they decide to take down Teddy. Because Detective Williams has given them the phone, they have all the information. They decide to take down Teddy. They make up a theory as to how Teddy and Theo killed Tim. They release the podcast. Detective Williams picks up Teddy and Theo, but then at the last minute, she finally gets the tax report back, and the tax report says that Tim Kono
was poisoned before he was even shot.
And they have pictures of Teddy and Theo outside the building before the alarm was even pulled. So they had nothing to do with Tim Kono's death at all. So that's big news number one. Big news number two at the end of this episode is that so Oliver has finally like pushed Jan away and gotten her out of the whole thing. So she goes home. There's a note on her door, "I'm watching you." And then at the end of the episode, after everyone's celebrating and feeling good because they got Teddy put away, well, Charles goes down to tell Jan the good news, goes into her apartment, and
he's going to tell her that she was right.
Right, because they realize,
it's not the Demuses at all because of the tox report. Yeah.
So he goes down to apologize and goes to her apartment. The door is open, and he finds her lying on the floor, face down, with some kind of wound. Bloody, some kind of wound around her waist. We don't know what it is, if she's been shot or stabbed or what. So that's how this ends. I have to say, though, like, there was such an energy and just a virtuosity to the last episode that coming like this was a fine episode, but I think that they resolved everything with Teddy and Theo. I don't know how else they would have done it, and I'm sure I can imagine them just like being like, okay, we painted ourselves into a corner here. How do we get out of this? Like, I don't know. I wanted more of an escalation, and we got more of an escalation. It's just that last episode was just so juicy. This one was, I don't know.
We found out a lot of good stuff.
We found out a lot of good stuff in this one, but it didn't have the same.
And this one didn't have discoveries. It added a lot more people.
The cast got a lot bigger. We added a lot more information. Like, just like they did a good job. All the fans did a good job of like going over all of the facts as they knew them. And we had to go back and watch like previous episodes to be like, oh yeah, that's right too. Like he comes on from 6 with the bag, and when she picks up the thing, and who he's talking to on the phone about so another thing we find out about this is that Oscar comes in and says that the emerald ring from Cutter did get delivered, but Tim Kono never got it. And we went back and watched the first episode, and he's yelling at somebody at the phone as to why he didn't. The first time we see him, he's yelling at somebody as why he didn't get this package, why it wasn't delivered. So there's stuff going on, people. And as the maniacs, Arcaniacs say, like, there's got to be multiple suspects because the timeline doesn't add up, which goes back to Cinda Canning's thing where she's just like, welcome to only murderers in the building.
Yeah.
So there's definitely multiple people at play here. So now the question is, though, are there multiple people at play? Does that include the Demuses, or are there even more people at play than all of this? So, Jessica, who you got? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, part of me is still going back to my original theory where I said that there were multiple people.
You did.
I said there was going to be a serial killer who's coming back into play, like who's been a sleeper, serial killer.
You also mentioned when we were talking about this, like that everybody's been poisoned now.
Yes.
Oliver's dog was poisoned. The cat was poisoned. Tim was poisoned. And I feel like somebody else was poisoned, but I can't remember which was the... But there's been at least 3 poisonings in all of this.
Yeah. And so a serial killer coming back into play. I said a cheesemonger, which we accepted as a deli thing. We now know that's kind of out.
I do want you to let you know that we did get the official paperwork back, the certification from the Podcast Education Board, that they have approved that the deli person and the cheesemonger can be the same thing. So we're cool there. So
I was kind of nervous that was going to pass, but I mean, in my head, I was all the time thinking,
we knew it was going to do it, but it's always good. Yeah, it's always good to get that official.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the third person, I said it was an accidental animal killer. And then there was
Winnie and the cat.
But now there's a dead or a poisoned dog, and that was purposeful. That was not accidental.
Yes.
So, gosh, this is the way beyond me. I feel like I am going to say... my new guest, I'm hovering back on Jan. I know Jan is...
I think that's a solid guess because she is...
dead on the ground. Or not dead, but she's bloody and wounded on the ground.
But she keeps... she does her best to, throw some obstruction up in this episode.
Yes, she keeps pointing at Howard.
Yeah.
I really don't think Howard did it, even if the cat is dead.
Howard faints at the sight of blood.
Yeah. How would he have made it back up from Tim Kono's...
From shooting Tim Kono. Yes.
So yeah, I'm still looking at Jan. And I'm kind of looking at Bunny because
Oh.
Murder by poison is generally considered, and it's a generalization, total generalization.
No, it's not a generalization. The numbers back it up.
Oh, really?
Well,
That it's
maybe
a
that's
female
wrong.
murder.
That's about suicide. Like women who commit suicide do it by poisoning. Men do it by violent means.
Oh.
That's how, so you're right. I don't know about actual like murders.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was making an assumption based on
Based on years of faithful TV mystery watching.
Well, and book reading.
I
Also,
get some book reading going on
murder
here.
book reading that poison is a thing. So that's why I was saying that it's like a female thing, but it whatever. I don't know.
But you're going back to
But
Jan.
I'm going back to Jan and maybe Bunny.
She's just getting the scent off of herself by
I'm
like.
hovering over those.
Yeah.
Two. Yeah, sent over.
She's trying to misdirect. She's trying to get people to not suspect her with like this wound on it. Something like she's self-inflicted or something.
Yeah. And then a part of me is also like, well, what about Ursula? Because she's.
I was thinking about Ursula as well. I will say so. I am currently wavering back and forth between Ursula and Lester.
Oh.
Lester's the doorman because
Yeah.
Lester keeps popping up in all these different situations. Like they have when they're at one point in this episode, everybody listens to the episode drop that like fingers Teddy and Theo. Sorry, yes, whatever. Sure, giggle. Come on, people, this is serious.
I love that Jan and Charles are so like, we had sex.
Yes, we
know.
delighted in each other's body. Oh, stop that. Yeah,
Stop.
Mabel is not having none of it.
Brazos. Yes, that was our safe word. Oh, stop it. Stop it. We don't want to know.
It was delightful. But yes, there's a scene of everybody in the building listening to the podcast, one of whom is Lester the doorman dropping off shirts on somebody's door.
Yeah.
And he's popped up before, giving Brazos his hat back. He's who they talked to about for information in the first episode. My point is that he's kind of moves through the building a little invisible.
Right.
A little invisible, but knows everybody's business, knows who's who and what's what,
Yeah.
and has like kept appearing episode after episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's still there. So part of me thinks that it's Lester, and Lester's running some con here. But to your point about Ursula and poisoning, like Ursula is the one who gives people packages.
Yeah.
But, because of the hat scene, I am still hung up on the hat scene where Lester, out of nowhere, comes up and gives Charles his hat. I'm like, what even was that? Like, how did he lose his hat? Why is this coming back now? And this is probably some like scene that they just cut for time, but I'm holding on to it for dear life.
I don't know. It could have a lot of meaning.
Yeah. Or we're back,
in the middle of
or we're back
everything.
to Bunny, like you said, Bunny. The whole like bunnies hate whales or whales hate bunnies. I forget. I know I made a big deal about it, but I do forget which way that goes. But I know there's some enmity between the two of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is also an exciting episode because we have another voiceover.
Yes, Sam, one of the people of the Arconiacs,
Yeah.
the leader of the Arconiacs, as he would sound. He's got the POV voiceover this episode. He also has a very lovely, I forget how he says he got anyways, he has a very lovely shirt with Oliver's face.
Yeah, he
on
made it.
He made it.
It's homemade merch. And so then, of course, Oliver has to ask him, how much would you pay for official merch?
Yes.
Which, how Oliver just...
Always working an angle. God bless.
Yeah.
He also has another great line in this. They're in the back of the van. Oliver's other great line in this. They're in the back of the van. They're being taken somewhere. It smells like something. He says it's formaldehyde. It's what they use to preserve corpses. He reminds me of my show Tuesdays with Bernie, which was a remake of both Tuesdays with Maury and Weekend at Bernie's, which I was just like, that's just like chef's kiss to whichever writer came up with that.
Yeah, and then he takes his own blindfold off.
Yes!
Which means that his hands are untied.
No, his hands are tied together, but he's able to move them. So he just moves them up. Yeah.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're bound, but they're not stuck to him or anything. Yes, and he still has use of his thumb. So he just takes off his blindfold.
Such a drama. Love it. And the little play was hilarious as well.
Yes. So of course he's a director and he needs to visualize things. So as they're so they have 24 hours to come up with their theory and shut down the podcast. And so that's why they bring in the fans to help them come up with this. And he does. He casts them and they do a staging of how this might have gone down to come up with a theory.
Yeah. And I love that now that I think about it. Oh my God, I just realized. I was like, why did they do that? When Charles and Oliver and Mabel go to meet Detective Williams and they go out to a place by the sea.
Yeah, by the river or something
It's just like those Nordic crime TV shows or, the books.
Well, it's like any kind of it's like Slow Horses and the spy thing where you always meet down by the river for some reason. So
Well, I mean, yeah, but that's Slow Horses is by a river. This is by I guess
could be the
Hudson River.
Yeah.
But it was very sea-like. It was
very
not
cool.
Like a lazy river, which is in Slow Horses. It feels very much like the lazy river.
Yeah, no,
part of the Thames.
It was very broad and it was a cool temperature. Like they leaned into the winterness of it all.
Yes, yeah.
100%.
And so it felt very like that Nordic thing, which okay, yeah. So exciting episode, not as spectacular as the last one.
Yeah, hard to beat that last episode, but still good. Still a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah, and it does make me want to go rewatch all the episodes and collect
it's
more
getting
information.
It's getting to the point where we know enough now to if we went back, I think we could start seeing things. But does that go against our rules? I know we have.
You do it all the time.
What? You're the one doing all the pre-cheating. I am not going against the rules.
Well, we did start a map where we were like, okay, the Demuses live on the 6th floor. Tim Kono lives on the 9th.
The 9th floor.
Oliver's
lives on 10. Mabel's 12.
And Charles is 14. What floor is Jan? We don't know.
We
need to go back and watch.
Will we figure this out before the season? We only have 2 more episodes. Will we figure it all out before then? Probably not. Let's be honest. This is not how this goes. We're guessing based on tattoos and like hat scenes. This is not how real detectives work. So you are listening to a TV crime podcast.
Yes. Well, we will keep guessing.
And we'll come back with more.
Yes. See you soon.